Welcome, welcome everybody. Hello, and welcome to another Community Fit, and in particular, there we go, and a Adjusting to Change Toolkit class, all about nervous system regulation. Can we get a show of hands or send up a little emoji of anyone who maybe this is your first class with us, or maybe this is your first Adjusting to Change Toolkit class? Okay, so we got at least one, at least a couple here. Cool. Welcome. Glad you are here. So, this class runs most like a course where every week we kind of build upon strategies, tools, thoughts to help you get through change. And change can literally be anything. It can be things going on at work, things going on at home, things going on with your body, things going on with life, things going on with the world. If you have stress, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, trauma, even, it is likely due to change. And change that is sometimes unexpected, change that is happening too fast, or change that you don't feel supported in for too long. And so the tools you'll learn within this class and this course really are tools to help you and others through change. It's a 6-week course. We're on week 2. Last week we talked about mindfulness, and we're going to kind of revisit that a little bit because as we talked about last week, that is quite literally the key that opens the doors to everything else. This week, we're going to dive into what I call the nervous system toolkit. And the nervous system toolkit is a toolkit of 5 different categories. I think of them as like buckets, different somatic or body-based mechanisms that in the moment will triage the nervous system, mean make you feel a little more grounded, a little more settled, a little more present and capable in the moment, and done over time, build up fortitude and resilience. Fortitude is capacity, the ability to handle more change, more stuff. And resilience is the ability to pick yourself up when you've gone through something that is just too much for you. So, fortitude and resilience long term, if you're practicing mindfulness in the toolkit, and in the moment, it's about making you feel better in the moment. In the moment exercises, right, or triage practices, I think it's like putting on a band aid to something or taking an aspirin. It doesn't fix the situation. It's probably going to help, but it's just going to make you feel better in the moment, right? It's like a momentary resolve. It's not a long-term healing. It's not a getting rid of. It's not a, oh, because I did a breath work 3 times that now I don't have stress. You're going to have stress for the rest of your life because you're alive. Then stress is a natural reaction to things changing. So, what we're talking about is these toolkits done in the moment will make you feel better, and then you got to keep practicing them. They've got to become a habit. It's a behavior. Every morning, every night, every day, you're going to practice some version of the toolkit. And how are you going to know when and where to practice and which ones work the best for you? Well, that was last week's lesson, mindfulness. So hopefully you have been practicing some of the mindfulness techniques we played with last week. If you are new and just joining us, we're going to revisit some of those so you're not lost, but you are going to have to play some catch up. You are going to have to practice just a little more to catch up and really make use of some of these toolkit exercises because next week we're going to talk about neuroception and co-regulation. Neuroception is a really fancy term that means how your body senses safety or danger. Do I feel, which we described last week as like a thumbs up moment or a thumbs down moment? Do I feel safe? Do I feel unsafe? And in particular, do I feel safe or unsafe in the presence of other people? Co-regulation. Because we're working our way up in this series to emotion or relational intelligence, compassion, emotional literacy, and understanding how our relationships with other people get us through change or don't. So, This week, toolkit, revisiting mindfulness. Get ready. So last week when we talked about mindfulness, mindfulness is what? Mindfulness is an awareness, the capability of paying attention to context and variability. Context, what's going on with the world around me? What is going on inside of me? How is what's going on in the world around me, in the room, in the greater world, wherever it is, on TV, in a book, right now over a screen? How is all of that affecting how I feel inside? Do I feel safe? Do I feel unsafe? Do I feel rested or unrested? And how does the way I feel inside influence or affect how I interface with things outside of me, specifically other people? When I don't feel good, when you don't feel good, you are not friendly. You are not welcoming. You are not a safe person. And it's not your fault. It's just your body responding to the nervous system and the ability to sense into safety or unsafety. And the more we pay attention to that, the more we can guide and influence that. So, context and variability. Variability is noticing that things can change over time, and I am a different person dependent upon the context I'm in, how safe or unsafe I feel, and variability that I can do things that influence. I can make choice. You can make choices that influence how safe or unsafe you feel in a moment, how thumbs up or thumbs down you feel in a moment by doing some practices, by making decisions around who to be with and when to be with them and the rest you need and so on and so forth. So that is mindfulness. And we practiced it through the lens of the body. And that's where we're going to get started today. So the invitation today is for you right now to just pay attention to your breath. You don't have to do anything. This is not, are you breathing right? Are you breathing wrong? It's just noticing. How are you breathing right now? Is it in through the nose, through the mouth? Is it out through the nose or the mouth? Does it feel big? Does it feel small? Does it feel labored? Does it feel organic? Does it feel manufactured? Like what is the quality of your breath right now? Just notice. Just noticing. And then instead, begin to notice the physical body. Maybe noticing, does it feel relaxed and supported by the chair you're sitting in, or does it not? How does your neck and shoulders feel right now? How do your hips feel? Your belly? Do they feel soft, supple, relaxed? Or do they feel like they are ready to move? Does it feel like you are holding yourself up and out of the chair a bit? What is the quality of that? And just noticing. Just noticing. Now, one of those might work really well for you, or you could notice somewhere in your body that feels exceptionally good or not good. Just noticing. That might be somewhere in the physical body. That might be hips or back or a foot or a shoulder, a neck thing you've got going on. And just noticing. And maybe even giving it some language. What does it feel like? Does it feel metallic? Does it feel spacious or not spacious? Does it feel like night or day? Does it feel like a sunset or midnight? Does it feel like blue or black or white or a kaleidoscope? Does it feel sharp or dull, warm, sandy, concrete like? Really thinking about the felt sense. Like it doesn't have to make sense. You're not looking to string anything along. You're just pulling words that maybe match a little bit of your sensation. This is going to be really important in a few weeks when we start talking about emotional literacy or naming how it is you feel inside. Because good and bad doesn't cut it, right? It's not enough. I feel stressed. That doesn't cut it. What do you mean when you say that? What is that? What is more vocabulary? What is more nuance to that? Because there's probably layers. There's probably more capacity for understanding in there. And the only person who can kind of suss through that is going to be you. And sometimes starting in the body is exceptionally difficult or easy, but it becomes really important because this is where you are at. This is you every day. So just noticing the body in whatever framework that is for you. Now, that's going to be our baseline, right? That's context number one. That's how you feel in the room. That's how you feel with me right now. That's how you feel with Bob, who's asleep over here, or whatever it is. That's how you feel right now. Then we're going to do a practice coming from the toolkit. Means we have switched contexts. We have done an intervention. We have done something to trigger a change. And then we're going to go back and we're going to notice whatever it is you just noticed. So if you noticed your breath the first time, you're going to notice your breath the second time. If you're noticing muscle tension, you're going to notice that. If you notice good or bad areas, vice versa. Because that is how we begin to notice or pay attention to variability. The fact that you can be in the same chair in the same room and feel vastly different second to second. It's like a what am I paying attention to and how am I paying attention to it moment. That's mindfulness. So, baseline, make sure you have it because we're going to do a practice and then we're going to notice again. Now, introducing you to the toolkit. A lot of you on here who have been with us for a while, you know the toolkit. The toolkit, again, is buckets or categories. They are not practices. The practices can be any number of things. I'm going to introduce you to some of the practices. But often in classes, when teachers are teaching you 40 different things, you're not going to remember that. Instead, the toolkit provides an easy to reference, an easy to remember 5 categories. And you're going to discern today which ones work best for you. Over the next few weeks, where this is how we're going to start the class, is with some toolkit exercises so that you get more repetitions. You can also, as you learn them, Google them, read books, YouTube, whatever it is, ask a friend, take a class, because you can put more practices, more tools within these buckets. Here's what I mean by buckets. The first bucket or tool within the toolkit is breathwork. Breathwork, tons of research, tons of study, and there are probably a million different variations of breathwork that you can do. I'm going to teach you one today. And the breathwork I'm going to teach you today is the physiological sigh. The physiological sigh has a ton of research behind it. Stanford has a lab dedicated to it. UCLA has a lab dedicated to it. And it is something that you do, I do, we all do. Bob the dog does every 3 to 5 minutes, whether you're awake or you're asleep. You do it all the time, and you're not even paying attention to it. Somatic practices, which is what the toolkits are, body-based practices, here's how I describe them. They take things, habits, behaviors, things that you do, I do, we all do, often unconsciously, regularly, right? Things that you are doing throughout your day. And they turn them into practices or habits or tools. Meaning, we take that thing that you do unconsciously that helps your nervous system to regulate, and you're not even aware of it, and then we make it a practice so that at 2 p.m. every day, you can do that thing on purpose, intentionally, to make your nervous system feel better. They're essentially taking behaviors that are organic to the human experience and intentionally making them tools. When we do that, when you practice the physiological sigh, per se, you then, when you practice it, it is a language to your body to calm down, to settle. It's not from up here. It's not a meditation. It's not self-talk. It's the language of the body. It's touch, it's breath, it's movement. So the physiological sigh, it's a double inhale followed by a single long exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Generally speaking, the first inhale is big. The second inhale takes your lungs to full capacity. Exhalation is then slow and drawn out. If you can go in through the nose, out through the mouth, all the better, but you do you. I'm going to demonstrate it once, and then together we're going to practice it 5 times. And then you're going to notice again, how does that make me feel? When I've done that intervention, does it change the way I feel? Physiological sighs look and sound a lot like this. Inhale, inhale, exhale. 5 together. Inhale, 4 more. 3, 2 more. Last one on your own. And now just notice. Notice if you feel different, how you feel different. Maybe notice, did that change your regular resting breath? Did that change any tension in the shoulders? Did it change any perception of your space or your room at all, or your experience? I'm to lend some language, it makes me feel more present. It makes me feel a little softer, like very aware of my feet on the floor right now. I'm feeling encouraged to speak a little slower. Those are all changes. Now, I practice this stuff a lot. So my capacity to notice context and variability, that change, is probably a little more keen. And the more you practice these things and pay attention, what is changing? How is it changing? Even better. Now, for some people, breath work, and in particular this breath work or any guided breath work, does the opposite. It actually makes you feel a little more stressed. It makes you feel a little more tense. It makes you feel thumbs down, right? And if that is you, and I were you, I would go, breath work is not one of the tools for me, at least not right now. One of the other four is probably going to be a better choice for you to triage in the moment and to build capacity over time. And that's fine. Here's the thing about nervous system work. I can't tell you exactly what's going to work for you. I can offer you library of choices. You've got to try them. You've got to overlay that with mindfulness, paying attention to how it's affecting you. And then you have to decide, which ones do I like best? Which ones give me more of a thumbs up moment and less of a thumbs down moment? I can't do that for you. That's your role in all of this. So, category number one in the toolkit is breath work. The tool we put in there today, in that bucket, in that section of the toolkit, is physiological sigh. It could be a 4-7-8 breath. It could be any of the Kundalini breaths. It could be a cyclical breath, a square breath, a box breath, a counting any which way breath. It could be anything. The breath work that we put in there today is physiological sigh. We'll play with other ones to put in that category later. Second category or toolkit area, right? The bucket is going to be orientation or sensory foraging. Your nervous system is designed to pick up on your information, the context, all the time. And the fact is, you are editing it out all the time. Here's what I mean by that. There's so much visual stimulus in your room right now, but you're not paying attention to it. You're paying attention to me or one other thing. There are so many noises in your space and outside of your space right now that you're editing out. There's so much physical sensation that you're editing out, your clothing on you, the temperature of the room, what you're sitting on. There's taste that you're editing out right now. And sensory foraging is an encouragement and a carved out time for you to just start paying attention to the information coming into your senses. Now, 70% of us, our dominant sense is going to be visual. I'm teaching from a fully abled body right now. So for me, visual orientation is what works best. We will play with other versions of orientation as the weeks come up, but I'm going to teach it today through the lens of visual orientation. Here is what it looks and sounds like. You're going to start looking around your space. You're going to look above you, below you, to the right, all of the areas. And here's the thing, go a little slower. Like go molasses, honey dripping slow. Just like receiving the space a bit. And begin to invest in objective noticing versus subjective noticing. Objective noticing is the way that any of us would notice the things in the room. That may sound like there's a camera and a computer and a bookshelf, there's books, there's a piece of art and a plant and a wall and another wall and more art, versus subjective noticing, which would be um, there's dust on the shelf over there that I need to clean. That thing is out of place. The plant needs some watering, right? Things that maybe only you would notice. I like that. I don't like that. That thing reminds me of this other thing. And instead, just intaking the space for what it is, paying special attention to doors, windows, exits, like how you could get out of the space if you needed to. Your nervous system really loves to notice ways of exiting. If something happened, how do I get out of here? So just noticing what's in the space above you, below you, all around. Taking your time. And then when you're ready, maybe even closing your eyes and checking in with your breath or that physical tension or pain in the body, just checking in and noticing how did that change in context, that triage, how did that affect you? And now you can make choices. Did you like breath work more? Or did you like orientation more? Which one works for you? And which one was like not as good? Practice the thing that really worked for you more often. And maybe you don't have to practice as much or right now at all the other thing. It's not about having to do all of the things. It's about having one or two tools that really help you. So we have a breathwork category and a sensory foraging category. The next one is therapeutic touch. Therapeutic touch is the first thing, touch in general is the first thing that we want or need when we're born. And it's the last thing we hope for as we're passing. And we don't receive it nearly enough throughout our life. Therapeutic touch is about physical touch and how that affects your nervous system. It can be done with hands, it can be done with like a warmed up massage ball or one of those like heated pads with a cat or a baby on your chest. There's so many options there. We're going to teach it through the lens of kind of warm hands. And again, there's so many variations of this, and we'll kind of play with them as we go along. But for now, let's bring our hands together, get them warmed. We're going to take our nice warm hands and we're going to put those warm hands on the cheek, jaw area and go, do I like that? Or do I prefer throat? Spend some time. Or do I prefer chest? Or do I prefer belly? Now, there are so many other options and we'll explore, but those areas are highly innervated areas. Those are the areas that we get a lot of bang for our buck. Jaw, throat, chest, belly. Remember how I said earlier that somatic practices are really about borrowing from things that we do often unintentionally, haphazardly, that then we turn into practices. I want you to think about when you receive, or you would imagine an avatar out there receiving shocking news. What might they do? Right? Or sad news, right? Or maybe you're anxious. We would organically, naturally touch some of these areas. Babies do it when they're born. And so turning them into a tool or a practice is super important. Maybe one hand on the jaw and one hand on the chest. Could be any number of things. Now, you have three options. Are you a breathwork person, sensory foraging person, or a touch person? Did you check in after you did the practice? Got to do that check in to pay attention to how did that practice affect you? Now, the next tool is movement. And when I teach movement, it can be big, big movement. And that's the movement that is often talked about when we're talking nervous system regulation. If I said, if I asked you if you had a movement practice, and in particular, a movement practice that you use to calm your nervous system, to relax, to de stress, chances are you would say something like, if you have one, you would say, yeah, I go for a run or a walk. I practice yoga or Pilates. I go to the gym, whatever it is, right? Those are big movement practices and they are exceptional. There's a lot of research out there on how big movement practices really support the nervous system. Here's the thing, all of those are great. There's not a bad one in the bunch, but they do not support your nervous system unless you enjoy doing it while you're doing it. Meaning, if you're like, I hate going to the gym, but I know I have to go to the gym because it's supposed to be good for my stress levels. If you hate it while you're doing it, it gets no reward with your nervous system. That's the thing. You've got to enjoy it whilst you're doing it. Also, if you are in an with an overly worked nervous system, some of those big movement practices, running, lifting weights, even Pilates and to a degree yoga, are actually doing the opposite thing to your nervous system. They are making your nervous system more into fight, flight, freeze. They're making your nervous system down regulated or up regulated. Sorry. Like that's not a good thing. We don't want that. We don't want more anxious energy running through it. What we're talking about here today are small movements, things that you can do in a chair, anytime, anywhere. So here's one of them. It's called a bilateral sway. And you're just going to start to rock right and left. And here's the thing with a bilateral sway. Can you do it where you can feel that you're swaying right and left? But if I were in front of you, maybe I'm not even noticing that you're swaying right and left. It's like just enough sway that you can feel it, but not enough sway that someone else could really notice it. It's pretty small. This is a good one if you're standing in line at a grocery store or about to give a presentation. You could stand up and do a little sway right and left. That standing sway is what a healthy nervous system does when it's regulated. Like if you had a regulated nervous system and you stood up, you wouldn't stand still. You would actually rock right and left. Just a gentle sway. I like coupling this one with like a little touch, right? The tools don't have to be used just one at a time. You could do a touch, you can do this. I can even do a physiological sigh with it. Once you know some of the tools, you can start to put them together like little Lego pieces, right? They exist individually, but you can put them together in a different assortment of ways. Now, that's four categories. The last category is probably the most simple, and it's also the most difficult for most people. That's because it's kind of been cultured out of us, and that's vocalizations. It's quite literally making sounds. Now, we're going to start super simple, but it could be one of the best tools you can have at your disposal is singing. And it doesn't have to be on tune. You don't have to be good. This is why so many people sing in cars, so many people sing in showers, so many people talk to themselves or sing when they're alone. It's actually a nervous system regulation strategy, but it doesn't have to be singing. It doesn't have to be talking. We're going to do it through the lens of sighing, which is different than a physiological sigh. This is an audible sigh. Hmm. Whatever it is. You could also do a hum. Hmm. So give yourself a few repetitions of a sigh or a hum, and then notice how that makes you feel. And then think about it. Which one are you going to practice for the next week in order to get better at it? Knowing that we're going to have more tools as we go along, are you going to practice a breath work, a sensory foraging, a therapeutic touch, a movement practice, or a vocalization? And you could pick more than one, but pick one and give it a go. Like I said, next week we're going to talk about how our bodies sense safety or unsafety, and specifically co-regulation. So we're going to start off with a little revisit of mindfulness, more of the toolkit, and then we're going to kind of have a talk heavy portion at the end. So I'll stick around for whatever questions you got. I don't know if Alicia or Raymond have anything to say, but thank you so, so much, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, James. The for me, the just the sighing, the humming is going to be good with the getting over this virus. It's going to be good to just kind of try to help clear
Yup,
that. So, and
yup.
that's what Raymond and I were talking about earlier in the chat, and it actually got out to everyone. We were talking about humidifiers. So if anybody has a has a good one they want to recommend, let us know. It's been hard to sleep in this dry weather with a little bit of a cold.
Yeah, I know. The virus struck our house this week,
Oh,
and
no.
yeah, we're getting over it. I'm a little more nasally today than normal.
Yeah, it's bad out there, everyone. So just definitely keep your hands washed, social distance, stay home if you can. It's a pretty bad
Oh,
season
thank
right
you.
now.
And thank you for the compliments on the background and such.
Oh yeah. Where's Bob today?
Uh,
There he is.
yup.
Awesome.
Okay,
Very
everyone. Oh, Swang did help. Yup.
Yes, that helped me too.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. We will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.